And yes, for the second time in 2025, we're live, just as we were scheduled to be. So, huzzah! Hey, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world, and welcome to ADRAMADA, another Dave Rush Ask Me Anything digital alchemy. And I am the aforementioned Dave Rush. Tech Weenie. I need a title. I have a lot of them. I need one for this show. I'm not Commodore ADRAMADA. That's just interesting, but it isn't it. All right, well, let's start with who's here, and then we'll. Hey, my phone's buzzing. Is it one of you guys? No. Yeah, it's YouTube. You are now live. Hey, I love that stuff. All right. Goodness gracious. Tullo it over an hour early. Patricia, shortly thereafter, getting some exercise in. Okay. Everybody knows my spiel. I've been losing weight since the COVID lockdowns occurred. And it's all going pretty good up until, I don't know, 5-6 months back. I started occasionally skipping working out in the morning. I didn't look at it as a cheat day. It was just always, man, I'm too busy this morning. I'll catch up on it tomorrow. And I'd catch up on it tomorrow. But then something would happen the next week, and I'd miss 2 days, and then 3 days. And then at some point, I even stopped for like a week. And it's, okay, this is no good. So I got remotivated, got back into it, got back up to the numbers and reps that I had been doing before. And I have been sitting stable for like 18 months on my reps. You know, I don't want to get built, and I'm too old to get built anyways. But I was dissatisfied with my numbers. And so I set a new plan this year. And that is to increase crunches and sit-ups and a couple of other, crunches and push-ups and a couple of other things by 5 every month. Used to be I could go up 5 a week, but it's just not happening these days. So starting the first full week of January, I bumped up both of those things. Injured Uncle Elbow, so I'm on hiatus from push-ups right now. The crunches went up, and first day, I hit that number nonstop. Haven't hit it again until yesterday. I always need a little break somewhere around 5 or 10, sometimes even just 3 from the finish line. And just, okay, now go again. But yesterday, made it nonstop. And then today was the big milestone, made it nonstop again. So if everything works out right then, I'll keep doing that. Maybe miss 1 or 2 more between now and end of month, but beginning of next month then, I should be able to go up another 5, and I'm going to try and do that all year, and that'll get me back to about the peak number of crunches and sit-ups that I've ever, I'm sorry, I keep saying that, push-ups, pull-ups that I've ever been able to do. So yeah, I'm with you on the exercise thing. Get the exercise in, ready for the show. I threw all the how to contact me's a couple seconds before show starts. So I'm not going to do that in the middle of the show and delay myself. Jason Helms is here. Jason and Patricia, my guess is you get the cold front that we are staring down in the next 48 hours. You'll get a little bit after that, I would think. And we will talk about that. Tullo it turns up right on the second. Greetings, usual suspects, as always. 5-5. Thank you so much. I don't even know if I'm using this microphone. I don't think I am. I think I'm using one of the ones in the cameras up there. Flangy audio. Okay. This is the argument. I will work on that. And I'll talk about that in a few minutes. So sorry. Xerxes, back amongst the living. Great to see you here. Cut carbs to 50 Gs. Excellent. I abandoned carbs about 2.5 years ago. It's working like a gem. Dig could get built with a carnivore diet. I'm basically keto / carnivore. That's where I'm at. Supposed to drop in the teens next few days. Yeah, exactly right. So us too. A hard cold snap. Maybe some moisture on Tuesday. If that's the case, we could see the very rare snow. 72 Saturday, right? That's when it comes down to us. And then, right, heads over in your direction. All right. Well, I'm getting close to back in order of how to do things on the show. I'm still a little bit behind, so bear with. I have no slides for today's presentation or news. Just going to be talking head today. So what do we got here today? If you're not watching this live, we recorded this live on Thursday, January 16th, 2025, at 7 p.m. Central Time. And that's what we do every week. We get together every Thursday evening, 7 o'clock Central Time, for an hour or so, talk about tech news in the news, talk about a project or a particular technology. Last week, we did part one of a two-part, why are rack servers different? So today we're going to finish that up with part two. I was looking over my notes template and going to start filling that thing out again. So today, in today's date, it was the following items. It was a bunch. I just culled out 3 of them. In the year 1547, Ivan the Terrible, at the age of 17, basically before he was Ivan the Terrible, but earned the title over time, he crowned himself the first Tsar of Moscow. Moscow, if you like. A couple of years later, 53 and 5 is 58 years later, the first edition of, my Spanish is just abysmal, El Ingenioso Hidalgo Don Quixote de la Mancha, Book 1 of Don Quixote by Cervantes, published in Madrid. I like this one, 1868. The refrigerator car was patented by William Davis, a fish dealer in Detroit, trying to move so that great Lake Erie and Lake Michigan perch over to whoever who wanted to eat that. I love Lake Erie perch. It is almost the only fish I love. So, eat up or all settled back into the norm. Past that. Doing that, did that. Upcoming shows. So this is all from the list of what was upcoming when I stopped the show and took kind of a sabbatical to deal with all the new jobs and new trainings and things like that. So now they are back in play. I mentioned this last week. We're going to talk about NetPlan. We're going to talk about KVMs, IP KVMs, traditional KVMs, and things like that. I've got 3 or 4 of them now running around here. And what do you need and why do you need them? Do you need them anymore? Or is it the other way around? Do you need things like, we'll talk about today, IPMI? So that's a show that's almost ready to go out of the box. And lots more on tap. We got a Discord home. If you're new to this show, look at the links at the very top of the feed. And you'll see, 4 or 5 links there with how to contact me and our Discord invite, and my X account information and my Mastodon information. And mentioned last week I became a mod over on Reddit for the CompTIA forum. So you can get good treatment from me. There's 4 new mods, and we all have kind of a similar mindset in most areas, but this person hates those kind of posts, and this one hates those, and this one loves these guys. They got to stay in, and I got my bent. So we're kind of feeling each other out for the last few weeks, trying to make sure that we're consistent. And it's an interesting and fascinating thing. Today, after the show, we are going to meet up live on the Discord server, again, like we did last week, and just hang for a little while. There'll be a voice channel. You'll see whichever one's active. And we're just going to go ahead and shoot the breeze. It's not about the show unless it's about the show, or the weather, or your pets, or your latest hairstyle, whatever. We just go and hang out and talk about things that people talk about when they're hanging out in a coffee shop or something. So please, consider joining us. And I will put up the Discord link again later in the show, in case this all wipes up near the top. So last show topic, I said we did part 1 of rack servers. Today, part 2. Upcoming neat things. Stuff in my life, stuff in tech. As you know, I think I got into this. Yeah, I did. I mentioned this a little bit last week. I'm taking a contract job to teach high school students remotely. They're all up in the Midwest. There's a couple of schools represented. I'm teaching some CompTIA courses. I'm teaching a couple of sessions of Core 2 and 4 sessions of Network Plus. It's interesting. That's everything I got to say. The kids are great. They're interesting. They're fun. They're involved. I'm terrible at the paperwork. The boss is going to chop my face off if you may be watching right now. And if so, I will be in touch with you tomorrow. I got one little shindig to set up on a trailer in the morning, and then we'll talk shop, and then I got to go do gigs. No slides this week. I am a guy. The world's full of people, and all people have flaws, and you could not begin to enumerate all of my flaws. But one of my biggest ones these days is I'm a guy who can't say no. And I got to stop that. I'm a people pleaser. It's not a really good trait all the time. But as a result, it is just wearing me to the bone between the classes and show prep and HOT, the hands-on training product, and gigs. Gigs weren't supposed to start happening again until February. I have done already 4 in the last week, and I have another 3 or 4 long, big, involved ones next week. Plus this weekend. This weekend is Washfest, my 2nd anniversary with them. They've been around forever. Washfest is where you throw washers in at a board with a hole in it, and this is the national championships they hold in East Bernard, Texas every year, and I take them some gear. So I'm going up Friday. The event is on Saturday. Then I go back up on Sunday to clean it up, clean my stuff up. Washfest 2025. Look it up. It's an interesting thing. I didn't mention all this stuff last week. What We Do in the Shadows is finished. Finished up about 3 weeks ago or so, and it was a good ending. I am now into Tulsa King and Landman. Those are cool. Strange New Worlds won't launch until spring or summer. They still haven't got that buttoned down. They did say they're all filmed. And same for the new Star Trek spin-off, Section 31, with the amazing, the incredible Michelle Yeoh. So, anybody else add anything? And we'll look at that, and then we'll dive into the tech news of the week. Reading messages here. Battling windmills. What's the name of the horse? Dulcinea? Dulcinea? And Sancho Pancho. That's not right. Pancho Sanchez? Something like that. In a long time. I like that Quixote is a valid Scrabble word. Quixote and Quixote, because you can use a Q and an X when the opportunity presents itself. Major point getter. Jason, talking with coworkers the other day about KVMs and looking into them. Either next week or the following. I'll look at everything I've got and the notes that I've made and go from there. Man, it's amazing and it's cool stuff. And if you want to go offline and you need some info before then, happy to do it with you on Discord or wherever. Spend a lot of time on Reddit. Fair game. Zach Everly. Zach. New name on this forum. Let's just go with that. I will look you up to see if I... Let me know. Do I know you from someplace? You don't have to say where. But if I should know you from someplace, Zach. I know first names of a lot of the things that I'm doing right now, but I haven't put a lot of effort into learning last names yet. So I think there is a possibility that I know where you are. Xerxes Patricia says hi, and how do you get a gig teaching? You teach for all your career, and you know something about the topic that somebody wants to be taught. Yeah, Tulsa King is amazing. Both of them are. They're a knockout. 3D printing dude. Okay, all right, I'm with you on that. We have to talk, Zach. I need help. I have reached out to my son, and he's ignored me because he's a busy man. I got a new 3D printer in like a year ago, and the same one I got for my son a couple of years ago, so I know it, I speak it, we use it. I cannot get anything to stick to the dang table. I haven't had one successful print job. I am doing something fundamentally wrong. So hopefully join the Discord and help me out. All right. News. See if we can do news in... It's 7:16. Cool. We'll do news in less than 10 minutes, and then we'll get back into checking messages and rack stuff. You know what this thing needs? There should be a dinger available, a notification, whenever a new message goes in the chat. So I'll at least know to look over there. I mentioned last week that in the last less than a year, Raspberry Pi Trading has introduced something on the order of 20-25 new products. And I said they were all boring. They were not boring, but they were not interesting enough to me that I felt the need to post them anyplace. Except for the one that came out about a week and a half ago. A little less than that. And that was the new Raspberry Pi 5 16 gigs! Plus an update to the CPU inside the system on a chip that it's just knocking everybody's socks off. And the 5 itself was a huge performance improver, somewhere in the 40 to 50% over the top of the line Raspberry Pi 4. So everybody always asks when a new one comes out in the press, is this the one that's going to replace the desktop? No. They're cool, they're wonderful, but got a long way to go to replace any kind of modern, even a bottom-end desktop. But they're still cool, they're still fun. So I thought I would just do a quick list here of all the products that have come out since May of 24, last year. There was the official Raspberry Pi M.2 hat. There are a couple third-party ones. I have one, and I now have the official M2 hat. I got 2 boxes ready to go. They only work on Raspberry Pi 5s because they need an NVMe channel. 3 weeks later, June 4th, the official Raspberry Pi AI kit came out. And then a couple weeks later, a bigger, better, stronger one, and they both exist. You can buy the cheaper one, you can buy the turbocharged one. August 8th last year, Raspberry Pi 2nd generation Pico, the Pico 2 came out. August 19th, the Raspberry Pi 5 straight came out, 2 gigs. They didn't release a 1 gig model. September, end of September last year, the official Raspberry Pi AI camera. It has AI power computational capability built into it, so we offload that from the main CPU of, you can do it on a Raspberry Pi, you can do it on any computer with what they call a CSI interface. October 7th, Raspberry Pi introduced their own proprietary micro SD cards. People are trying out micro SD cards in Raspberry Pis all the time and getting different results from different vendors. The top-end vendors, SanDisk, Lexen, that's not the right name, it's not Lexus, but whatever it is, those always perform well, they're always compatible, and the cheapy, I spent $5 on 128 gig micro SD. Maybe it'll work. And if it does, maybe it'll work for a couple of weeks. And maybe it won't work at all. So they got tired, I think, of hearing all the complaints. I want an official approved list. Now they have an official approved list. Buy ours. Their numbers are middle of the road. They're not much faster than anybody else. They're not much slower than anybody else. 3 weeks later, 2 weeks later, the official Raspberry Pi SSD and the SSD kit, which is an SSD and a hat, came out. Sweet. Then the next day, the improved AI hat came out, about twice the performance of the lesser one. November 7th. I find this stunning. I guess I don't know enough about USB, but I see reports on the Raspberry Pi forums that this USB hub doesn't work with this Raspberry Pi model. This one does. And there's been kind of an ad hoc creation of a compatibility list. So again, looks like Raspberry Pi trading, we're tired of hearing this, and they made or branded their own known to work with everything. A week later, we're November 14th, a new Raspberry Pi Touch Display. The Touch Display 2 came out. I have a pair of Touch Display 1s running up on top of the desk, and they've always been wonderful. New features and better, stronger, and lighter and flatter. That other one's got this hump in the back of it that's unsightly and it's unwieldy. 11 days later, the Pico 2 wireless model came out. 2 days after that, the Raspberry Pi 5 compute module came out. Also, a case and a cooler for it. December 9th, as long as we're in the mode of coming up with peripherals that everybody else has, but we want to make our own for whatever reason, profit, compatibility, all of the above, the official Raspberry Pi monitor came out, as did the Raspberry Pi 500. That's the Raspberry Pi that's built into a Raspberry keyboard. And then finally, about a week ago, the Raspberry Pi 5 16 gigs. All right, regular news that's in the news. This is a big day for space. NASA did a spacewalk on the ISS to patch a solar telescope. It was successful. Bong, Blue Origin New Glenn, successfully launched the Blue Ring Pathfinder, and it has achieved orbit. First attempt. It's a very nice thing. See that? It's going to stay in medium Earth orbit. And Starship did a Starship 7 launch. It's their supermassive bird, and it was a mixed success. They lost the upper stage, but they did catch the booster with the big clamps, the chopsticks, and that is fully intact. Kind of the bigger deal. General tech news. MIT has been working on robot bees for some time. For agricultural purposes, to use them just like bees do their job. They go and hit pollen on this plant and go disseminate it to that plant. It has a million other uses, and they just keep improving and improving their little robotic bees, and they're about the same size as a bee. They've got one that hovers now 1,000 seconds. It can flip and do aerobatics. It can fly at 35 centimeters per second. It can trace paths. So that's kind of cool stuff. All right, I don't know what to think of this one. And I'm going to scroll up on the chat and see what you guys have to say on this. Somebody has created a thing called the Implantable System for Opioid Safety, ISOS. It's an underskin implant. It's about the size of my middle finger, very close to actual dimensions, and the goal is to mount it underskin somewhere near the sternum or central solar plexus. It's got a battery in there, it's got a vibrator in there, it's got sensors in it, and it has a dose of Naxalone, what we call Narcan, right, to save your life in the event of an opioid overdose. All right, let's do all of this. It's just two little paragraphs here. I'll pull it. The device successfully revived 96% of fentanyl overdosed pigs within an average of 3.2 minutes. There's a conversation in and of itself that I would love to have. We OD'd these pigs, but we saved them. Okay. Now, there's external delivery mechanisms for Narcan. This is just an internal one. Is there a downside to this thing? Sure. The battery in it is good for 16 days of vital sign monitoring. It can be wirelessly recharged as needed. But that begs the question, who needs this device to be implanted? And if so, you can envision all kinds of population segments. Fine. Some of those population segments are not going to do what it takes to get this thing recharged. Recharge it at home, recharge it wherever they happen to be, go into a clinic for an hour or two every week to get it recharged. And likewise, the naloxone, it's not Naxalone, it's naloxone, naloxone if you prefer. Nalox 1, there. Sorry, what was the thing I put on Discord yesterday? The better pronunciation for, whatever it is. Anyways, it's got a little reservoir, 10 milliliters or something like that of this stuff. And it can be refilled with a hypodermic needle inserted through the skin and into a port on the implant. And it's necessary because the drug lasts for 14 or so days at body temperature. So it is envisioned by the inventors that patients who need this stuff will have to go into a clinic once every 2 weeks for a battery charge and a refill. And so, given all that stuff, Nostradamus, thank you, Patricia. It's Nostradamus, but I've always thought Nostradamus is a much better pronunciation. So I'm curious what your thoughts are. You can throw them here in the chat. We can talk about it in the in our meetup on Discord after the show. But I just don't know what to think about that whole thing. Here's some cool news in medicine. A functional cure. They put that in quotes in the article that I read, so I don't know what it means, but for diabetes, restores insulin production with stem cells. And they have cured somebody with a demonstrator here. A patient with type 1 diabetes has been functionally cured of the disease. It has never been curable. It's always been treatable. So if this is truly the case, and it was using the patient's own stem cells and then transplanting new insulin-producing cells into whichever organ, not a gallbladder, spleen, whichever it is. And he's making his own insulin again, or she. Sounds like a wonky way to take care of a problem. Yeah, who needs this? Yeah, I can look at this and I can give you niche cases. People who might inadvertently come in contact with some kind of opioid. I was attacked by a wacky guy with a needle and he shot me up. And okay, first responders, right? That can happen to a cop. They can a doc might accidentally hit somebody's bad guy needle while they're stripping him and prepping him for whatever. So, but is it, if it's a doc, he's probably in a facility that's got Narcan. So I don't know. I just don't have a handle on that. FDA, big news today and yesterday, outlaws red dye number 3. We can talk politics on that. We can talk whatever. I was thinking about this. We got about 1 minute to finish news. Red dye number 3, the scourge of the planet. And so was high fructose corn syrup. And so was red dye number 2. And so was, all right, all this stuff is killing us, right? And yet, the average lifespan of humans worldwide, including the evil nation of us, who eats the worst food on the planet. Our lifespans continue to go up and up every year. Bob Euchre died today, 90 years old. Rest in peace, Bob. We all love you. Just a bit outside. So, Colossal. That's a company in bioengineering. They secured $200 million to advance their big project, de-extinction science. Their big plan is to resurrect a woolly mammoth. There's another philosophical discussion that we could have for 6 hours. I don't know what I think about this. We can all look at Jurassic Park and say, oh, a movie said it's really horrible. But science can also say that, and science also says there are benefits. They never say it's a good thing. They say there are benefits. So here again, another one that I don't know what to think of. And finally, let's close it all down with a couple of IT stories. Scribus has a new release. Scribus is an open source desktop publishing app. Desktop publishing apps are different than word processors. It's like InDesign. So it's got layout, and it's a really fully powerful thing. You can create a legitimate copy of Washington Post with a good desktop publisher, and Scribus is one of them. So they got a new release out. New releases of OpenZFS. You can, and ZFS is a file system. It's amazing, powerful, supports all kinds of cool RAID levels, including RAID Z and fast deduping and much more. You can install this and set it up on storage devices on any flavor of Linux with kernel 6.12 or higher, and we are much higher than that now. Let's see, it's a file system, volume manager, downloadable, blah, blah, blah. It's got neat new features. Linux Mint, latest version of that, 22.1, is now available for download. It comes with Cinnamon Desktop, current one, built-in nightlight feature, new default themes, new native dialogues, cool stuff. That gets us through the news of the week. All right, let me entertain me. Okay, that's what I want to do. All right, check and see what you guys had to say while I was doing all that. See where you're at. Dinner. Be back later, said Xerxes. Nostradamus, my dude. Hey, if anybody's watching the show here and you're not watching it live and you're not playing with Discord, get on my Discord server. It's fun. I had this really wacky idea a day or two ago about various topical news things that are not earth-shaking, but they're interesting and they have strength and power and value. And I always get a kick out of whenever something major happens in the world, some goober raises his hand and says, Nostradamus predicted this. And then you go through his writings and they're so vague, you can ascribe anything you want to anything that he wrote. And I asked some of the folks on Discord to use their own words or use an online AI to give me a passage on what Nostradamus might have had to say about this whole upcoming TikTok ban. And some amazing, overachieving things got printed there. I should share them with you maybe a little bit next week. It's a funny thing. I love playing with Nostradamus predictions. Sorry, as far as I'm concerned, that was a guy who was playing around with fentanyl and funky way not to take care of a bomb. Yeah, I don't know. It's as good a use of resources as the crazy study. Yeah. Come over to the Discord server or come over to X. I will repost on X this fascinating academic article that Tullowit found and posted in a couple of different places. Let's just call this public money went to that. Might earn the Golden Fleece Award. Somebody else is doing that. Elizabeth, who are you? Hi, Elizabeth. Meant to ask about Discord what you did. Oh, yeah. Me too. And hopefully Elizabeth will join us. There she is. Oh, you're a teacher as well. Oh, Elizabeth, you got to come in. You got to talk with us. We're so much more than tech weenies. All right, not much. Let me do one other thing here. This is going to be the last time I do this on today's shindig. I'm going to put the links up so I don't have to do it again at the end of the show. Bump. Ways to get in contact with me. Interesting sites that I hang around with. Places you might want to find me. How to get on the Discord server. Stuff like that. Two left. Macedonia. I think I got my first follow on Mastodon. It was a little while ago. I don't check it very much because it's waiting for a big project. Hey, if anybody's here from my Indiana crowds, be checking out this Reddit CompTIA thing. They will help you. I will help you there too. All right, so we're going to switch back into, excuse me, rack servers. We talked about formats last week. We talked a lot about physical parameters, multiple CPUs, tons and tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of RAM. And I left off talking about how to manage this thing. Now, you can manage rack servers like you manage any other server. You plug a keyboard and a monitor into the interface, a mouse if it's a Windows server, and do your thing. What if you want to make a change to the hardware infrastructure? Maybe that's supported by the operating system that you have running, but there are features in rack servers that's absolutely not the case. And so rack servers that are designed to be rack servers have this additional access method that allows you to log into not the operating system that's running in memory, but into the server's guts. There's a special built-in system on a chip circuit in there that allows us access to BIOS, maybe not reading the BIOS, but updating BIOS, changing settings like fan speeds and internal IP addresses, and all kinds of other goodies like that. And there's different hardware in different manufacturers' servers and different firmware programs to do these things. They're all called out of band, and they only work over a network connection. If you plug in a monitor and a keyboard, you can't get to this subsystem. Monitor and keyboard can only get to subsystems that use the regular CPU and regular RAM. So this was kind of an interesting thing. I had CPUs for these computers, but I didn't have the RAM in yet, and I wanted to make some internal changes to it. Well, I can't get into BIOS because that needs CPU and RAM. I can't get into anything except I can get into IPMI. It's its own dedicated little computer in there with its fingers and tendrils into all kinds of subsystems, and I was able to make the changes on that. Tried it with a monitor and a keyboard just to do the test. Nope, because that needs a real CPU and real RAM. Had one, but not the other. Needs them both. So I connected to the thing over a network, and that's a little bit tricky. You may or may not be able to do that, depending on what settings are already there. It may be locked, and you may have to wait to get CPU and RAM in there just so you can set these firmwares back to their defaults and then log into them and manage them over the net. So there's a most common standard one. You find these in a lot of manufacturer servers. It's called IPMI, Intelligent Platform Management Interface. Supermicro and a bunch of other people use those. They use this little dedicated system on a chip subsystem board. In the case of Supermicro, since that's the box I have, it's called a BMC, the Baseboard Management Controller. Other vendors have the same technology, goes by different names, does things a little bit differently. there are satellite controllers in there. The BMC talks to the satellite controller that can access some degree of BIOS. There's a controller in there that can talk to the CPU and RAM. I can find out what I have installed. I can find out all kinds of different versions of firmware. I can use this thing to access an external storage device and load up and install an operating system on the hard drive. That's a lot of cool stuff. I mentioned that Dell's version of this stuff is called iDRAC. Sometimes they just call it DRAC, Integrated Dell Remote Access Controller. And there's another popular one out there called ILO. Yeah. I talked about the fact that rack servers have redundant power supplies, and they're not failover power supplies. This one's not dead while this one's running until this one fails, because then the whole server would come down waiting for this one to come up. So they're both all running all the time, splitting the load, and if one of them fails, the other one just increases his load output, and the server issues warnings. I can see those online over IPMI if I want. Pull the bad one, slap in the new one, and we're back to full operation. Even though I teach CompTIA and other courses, I want hands-on experience. We got ways. I got so much to show you. Servers have VGA ports. A few of them now are including HDMI ports, but there's no but. Mostly up until recent times, it's a VGA port. If you have a VGA-based KVM, you can go through an adapter. If you've got a new modern server that's got an HDMI connector, we can convert back and forth. But as I said last week, don't go to a flea market and say, holy Hannah, look at that. There's a pizza box server, and it's $4. $4. I'm buying it. And then you look at the back and say, oh my gosh, it's got a VGA. This must be ancient. Forget it. No, VGA ports are on ones made today. All right, not doing that. All rack servers have a very extensive UEFI BIOS. We talk about UEFI BIOSes in desktop PCs. All you ever see on the implementation of a desktop PC UEFI BIOS is a pretty setup program. It's mouse accessible. Because one of the things UEFI can do is it can wake up the CPU in a more powerful mode, and that means the BIOS program can be bigger than the old BIOS programs. And what they do with that on desktop PCs is they say, okay, fine, we'll build in some mouse and graphic support, and that's about it. But in servers, they do a lot more things, and one of the things that they do is they create a UEFI shell. That's kind of like a command line within a command line, and now you can run UEFI or programs that are compatible with the UEFI shell and the type of CPU in that box. 99.5% of them are AMDs and Intels and have the same functionality. So I got IPMI programs or UEFI shell programs on a flash drive. I pop it in there, I boot to the UEFI shell, and now I can go run the programs on that flash drive. The computer's not even turned on. It's plugged in, but that's it. So, wow, really awesome, amazing UEFI stuff. Once I get this thing online at the end of the month, racked up, I will share with you. I'll make a public bit of access. No, don't hack it. It will probably be hackable. We talked about the fact that they come in all kinds of heights. 1U, 2U, 3U, 4U. Heights are 1.25 inches. And we find the bigger ones tend to have bays for more hard drives. Mine has bays for 4 hard drives. There's a way to sneak in 1 or 2 more. But sometimes you just want a dedicated file server that's got 36 hard drives in it. That's what we had at the place I used to work, which you guys all know. And one day it said, bye-bye. It had backups in it, and things, but they were all internal. We weren't doing a lot of external backup. So once it got, this wasn't the problem. There was a problem with the CPU in there that after X amount of years of running, it was failing but it would still function until you turned it off. And then when you turn it back on, the failure mode in the CPU was unrecoverable. And we ran into that one day. We said, we're going to make an upgrade to some of the drives. And so we got the drives in, and they powered it down, and they slapped the new drives in, and they tried to power it up, and it said, ha 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 ha. And no fix for that, so we had to buy a whole new box. We said there are typically multiple network interface cards in a rack server, not including the one for iDRAC, IPMI, ILO, whatever. Mine has 4. There are adapter cards and slots, so you can get more. Servers, rack servers, are very, very, very insanely different than desktop PCs. So much more that we can do with them. How do you boot them up? Well, you can boot them up just like any server. Put a bootable operating system on a hard drive. Tell your UEFI BIOS that that's one of the boot devices, and you're not going to see a list of 2, 3, or 4 bootable devices in there. You may see a list of 16, 20, 25 bootable items in a priority list. But okay, that's one way to boot it. You can also boot from an external drive like a flash drive, a thumb drive, an external USB drive. Let me show you this guy. Can't see my picture. I don't know if I'm turning it up on camera here. There's me. Okay. This looks like a flash drive. Pull the end off. Hey, look at that. There's a USB connector. Pull the other end off. There's a USB-C connector. Cool. This is a 1 terabyte flash drive device. But what's different about this and anything else is this is an SSD. This thing is so blindingly fast, and it's a terabyte. So we can put whole bunches of operating systems on here, a boot shell, tremendous amount of things, and make that sort of a master utility for working with racks and racks and racks and racks and racks and racks and racks of servers. Got a problem with this one. All right, let's boot it up from the super drive. We can also boot up from an external hard drive, and I can do that by setting up an SMB drive, just like a regular Microsoft Samba drive or SMB from Linux, and boot over the network. Very, very common when you have a server that's got a bunch of virtual machines in it, and there's not enough space in there for all their virtual hard drives in there. Fine, we'll make a rack mount file server out there with tremendous amounts of storage and point the VMs to there. And then there's traditional old PXE booting, PXE. We can use any of the network interface card interfaces and point it to a PXE server that's got bootable operating systems, on it. So a lot of power and capability built into the booting world. Talked about the EFI shells, talked about storage. Most rack servers have bays that hold 2.5-inch and 3.5-inch drives. I got a caddy in the other day. Yeah, I'll show it to you next week. This thing goes online, gets racked in 2 weeks. Rack servers can be dedicated storage devices. You can get like Synology boxes. They have storage capacities that are amazing. They have RAID processes that are different than the stock ones we've all learned about. RAID 0 and 1 and 5 and 6 and 10. Manufacturers, vendors like Synology have come up with amazing new ways of doing redundant arrays of inexpensive disks or reliable arrays. There's all kinds of words you can plug in there. And you can get them as pre-configured network addressable storage addressable networks, SANs. You can make custom storage servers. One of the really neat things you can do, you can make your own file server. Just take any old x86 box. It doesn't have to be a server like we're talking about, but this is really well adaptable for a real rack mount server. You don't throw in an operating system. you download and install an operating system called TrueNAS. Used to be FreeNAS. Now it's morphed into TrueNAS. And you get into the management menus and you say, you answer, what kind of storage device is this going to be? Is it going to be a Samba server? Is it going to be an FTP server? Is it going to be a ZFS file system? Is it going to be ButterFS? All kinds of possibilities. You set it up. You set up the permissions and the accounts if that's necessary. Connect it to the network, and you're done. Now you've got this big shareable file system with whatever degree of security you want. So that's fantastic as a job for one of the cores of a rack mount server, maybe a couple if you're talking about a lot of people, maybe all of them if you're talking about tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people. But that, again, is what rack servers are designed to do. We've got all these multi-core CPUs. Some of the new, latest, greatest AMD cores are talking about thousands of cores. Thousands. 3,000. So we can do amazing things with that. It should be obvious file systems are a weak point in any server installation because we're talking in many cases about spinning hard drives. When you start messing with SSDs on the enterprise level, consumer SSDs come in about 3 flavors and a couple sub-flavors of those things. But there is this other kind of SSD that's an enterprise-grade SSD. It looks and acts a lot the same as a consumer-grade, go out and get your Samsung 850 or Samsung 860 terabyte drive. But that has a limited number of rewrite cycles. Sooner or later, the memory cells that you're writing into can and will fail. So you get the pro version of the drive. That improves the number of rewritable cells manyfold. Enterprise grade ones not only increase that by insane numbers, but they're also better, stronger, faster, smarter chips inside. So they're designed to handle the rewrite loads of thousands of users and the rewrite speeds of those thousands of users. I bought this morning a used enterprise grade SSD, very cheap. It's probably not got that much life in it, but I'm not going to put 10,000 users on my server. 20, 30, 50, 100 maybe, depending on who all I share it with. That thing will go many years of many lifetimes. All right, the last thing I have to say about this thing, my last note that I made on this, is kind of a repeat. Rack servers can access direct attached external and internal storage systems. They can boot from them, they can save to them, they can share and manage files with them, they can delete them, whole file management system. They can access storage services across a network. So there's a lot more to it. We could do a week's college class if we so chose to talk about this stuff, but not necessary. And I got about 7 minutes left, so I can see what you guys have been talking about. And then we'll work on closing things down. Okay, so I had notes on hot, and I skipped over it. But since the topic has come up, hot. The hot network kits have almost the last of the hard parts. The only thing that they need now of hard parts is Raspberry Pi boards. I've got 3 under construction, 3 kits under construction. They've got switches, they've got routers, they've got cables. They need a couple of tools, crimp tools. They need a couple of test things, not getting real high on the hog on those. I have some really useful tools, testing tools, that are beyond inexpensive. Look this up sometime. Look at network cable testing tool, cheap, and you'll find a very popular version of these. A lot of different manufacturers, or they're all relabeling the same thing. They're $4 or $5. So that's going in all the kit. I'm not going to put in a network scanner. Those are $600. But the network kits are really, really cool. They are 100% functional. They're amazing. So those of you who aren't aware, there will be 2 Raspberry Pis in them. One has a bunch of servers on it. The other has clients on it. They will change configurations in Linux. There's a system that I built so that if you mangle everything, it's really easy to recover back to defaults. And all the labs, most of the labs, all the labs require that you reset back to default. So that's always going to be something they can do in their sleep. There'll be crimpers so they can make their own cables, make crossover cables, make network cables. There's switches. There's this really amazing, powerful router. So the equipment stuff, I can complete the equipment stuff in a week. And the only expensive things is the Raspberry Pis. You can get Raspberry Pi 4 1 gigabyte systems for $35. So I need 6 of those to finish up the kits. That's less than $250. So that's going to be easy. The tools, they're not expensive. The set of tools and crimps and things like that I need, that's all going to come in under $50. So those will be clean. The work is I have a tremendous amount of work to do on the lab manual. The other kit, the PC kits, all the hardware is complete on all of those kits. The manual is 95% complete. It just needs some tweaks. And then we are ready to set up a web server. Guess where that's going to go? New server going into the rack at a data center. Yeah, that's where we're going to operate that thing. These kits, if you don't know, are a little different. They don't work. These are kits. I knew people who used kits like this in classroom environments 2 years ago or so and farther back, and they would break them. The students would break them. They would bend pins and connectors on CPUs, and they would break RAM slots and things like that. And then they got to buy, or hopefully they bought insurance, and we had to replace motherboards and all that kind of stuff. And it really bothered me that we were going to bring kids in and teach them how to do this stuff, and they broke it. Did they really learn? So I wanted to make kits that they could drive like a rental car. It already comes pre-broke. The motherboards don't work. They've got bent pins in them. The CPUs, they might work, but they're cheap. You wouldn't use them in the real world. The RAM probably doesn't work. There's a few things that I had to buy that actually worked. SSDs, but big deal. They were 32 gigabytes. They cost $1.80 a piece. Chinese knockoffs. Because I don't need these things to work. I want these people to learn how to install this stuff, how to put thermal paste on, how to not put too much on, how to not put not enough, how to socket them in, all that other good stuff. Cool, 2 minutes of show. So, as a result, number one, they're safe. They can't damage these things because they're already damaged. And B, because this stuff is mostly dead, they're really, really cheap. And I'm over the board, over the top here. They come with stock CPU coolers. And then they come with fancy CPU coolers. Big monsters like somebody might want to put in a gaming system. Oh, yeah. And they come with water CPU coolers. And they come with regular power supplies. And they come with enormous prices. So everything that people are going to run into as PC support technicians, PC builders, things like that, they're in these kits. And all the labs talk them through how to uninstall things, how to install things, how to mount them in the case, how to use the wrist straps. I got wrist straps in a couple of weeks ago. It's amazing. I love this thing. I'll break it out on a show one day because I can do self-marketing now. But I don't want to turn this show into a marketing show, right? All right. Anybody got any last-minute thoughts before I do the big close here? This was your buddy, because I'm only doing some IT support as a side part of my job. And Patricia has an amazing job, and she's so multitasking at her job. More power to you, everything you do. We all love you for that. So nothing I'm going to do. I'm not up to speed on support, especially if I were in an enterprise environment. Golf caddy. Alrighty. Let's see. I don't do that yet again. So we will bring that up. And then we do this, and we close things down with the traditional close. Everybody, thanks for getting together here. Reminder, Going to take me a couple minutes to clean up, and then I'm going to come online with everybody else on one of the voice channels on the ADRAMADA Discord server. See the link just a couple lines up. If you haven't joined it, or if you haven't joined us yet, please come on in and just hang out. We're going to shoot the breeze, have some fun, catch up with everybody, and see what's all going on. In the meantime, I wish you all a great rest of the week. Take care of each other. Take serious steps to stay healthy, and if at all possible, of course, call or visit your parents. And never forget, technology is great, but the greatest resource we have are you and I. And with that, I bid you good night. I'll see you on ADRAMADA next Thursday on the other platforms that I'm on. And until then, remember, how you do anything is how you do everything. Eep, up, or ah.